We're going to be looking today at finding the common denominator with mixed numbers. It's exactly the same as it was yesterday. The only difference is now we have a whole number in front of the fraction. So let's first get started by looking at the actual lesson. And we're going to start off by checking yesterday's assignment. So please take the time right now to open up to page 155 and 156 to check over your answers. Bottom half of page 155. The top half of page 156. And the bottom half of page 156. After you have finished checking, please close up your workbooks and open up your notebooks so that you're ready to work on today's problem of the day. So today's problem of the day. Lil is using 2 3/4 cups of wheat flour and 1 3/4 cups of oat flour to make bread. How much flour is he using in all? So if you look at the actual problem here, you will see that I went ahead, that we first need to highlight the important information. And we need to know how much flour he is using in all. Now, this might seem difficult because it has mixed numbers, but they both have the same denominator. So if we add 2 3/4 plus 1 3/4, this is going to come out to be 3 6/4, which we have to then convert that mixed number, or I'm sorry, the improper fraction into a mixed number. And 6/4, if you took 4/4 away from 6/4, that would give you 1 2/4 plus the 3 that is over there already, which would give you the answer of 4 2/4, which is letter D. All right, so now let's open up to page 157. Like I said before, you're going to be doing exactly the same like we did yesterday. The only difference is that now we will be having mixed numbers. I can add and subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators and assess reasonableness. So it says Carolyn trains every week for a track and field competition. She writes down how long she spends running sprints and jumping hurdles. How many hours does she spend training on Sunday? So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we are highlighting the important information. And we start off with the question is, how many hours does she spend training on Sunday? So the information is right over here. We see that she spends 2 2/5 hours on sprints and 1 1/4 hours on hurdles. So they want you to write the expression. And so the written expression would be 2 2/5 plus 1 1/4. Now, we don't have to solve it yet, but they do want us to estimate. So if we look at 2 2/5, if we first just look at the 2/5 and we think about 0, half, and 1, is 2/5 going to be closer to 0? Is it going to be closer to half? Or is it going to be closer to 1? And 2/5 is closer to 1/2. So the estimated number would be 2 1/2. And the 1 1/4, that's a tricky one, because the 1 1/4, the 1/4 could go to either 0 or 1/2. I would accept either one of those answers. You could answer 1/2, 1 1/2, or you could say 1. Okay, the book says we should say 1. Okay, but 1/4 is actually right in the middle there. So your estimated answer would be 3 1/2. Now, what they're going to be asking you on the next couple problems is going to be, how do you find the common denominator so you can actually find the actual answer? Well, as always, I feel you should make sure you write it vertically, not horizontally. And that way you can do all your extra work. So we have 1 1/4. So we're looking between the 5 and the 4. The 5 and the 4 are not the same denominator, so we have to set it up so we can find what that common denominator would be. And I kind of, well, let's see. I debate about this each year. I like to leave the whole number behind because I think that gets a little confusing. So we're just going to leave the whole number sitting over here all by its lonely self, and we're just going to convert to fractions. So we have to look at the 5 and the 4 and be asking, what's going to be my common denominator? Now, 5 and 4 have popped up many times before. So if you start remembering some of the patterns, you're going to know what the lowest common denominator, lowest common denominator is going to be. But if you don't, write your multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Okay. And some of you who have already figured it out know that the common denominator, because 5 would have 5, 10, 15, 20. Sometimes it's kind of hard to write with your finger. So we recognize that 20 is our common denominator. Now I'm going to erase this because I don't want you getting confused, because it's kind of too close to the other information. And so we're going to circle our 20, and that's going to be our common denominator. So now we need to figure out, just like we did yesterday, what's going to be my numbers that I need to multiply by our fraction to get the denominator of 20. 5 times what gives me 20? Well, if you look here, I guess I erased it. It'd be 4/4, because 4/4 equals 1, so we're not changing the value of this fraction. 2 times 4 equals 8. Okay, and then over here, 4 times what gives me 20? It would be 5/5. So that would become 5/20, and 8/20 plus 5/20 equals 13/20. So the question becomes, are we done? And the answer is no, because we still have to add these whole numbers. 2 plus 1 is 3, and we're going to just bring that 3 right over here. And I debate about it because I think it starts to get too confusing when you have too many numbers over here, but you can put them there if you want to. It's just a preference of my own. So the answer is 3 13/20. Now, if we look at the rest of the problems that are on the remainder of this page, you'll see that they state all the things that we already did. Rewrite the expression in part A using equivalent fractions with a common denominator to find the sum. And then how many hours did Carolyn spend training on Sunday? Is your answer reasonable? Explain. I'm sorry. That's just too much. So just cross it out. You already did that. You already found out if the answer was reasonable. Okay, so we're moving on. All right, so let's move on to the very next page. Okay, once again, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to highlight the important information. Jonah's best pole vault time was 7 1/4 feet. A sign in the gymnasium shows the gym's record. How much shorter than the gym's record is Jonah's best jump? So we first find what is the important information. You start off by highlighting the question. Okay, that's a lousy job of highlighting, but that's okay. How much shorter than the gym's record is Jonah's best jump? And we know that his best jump is 7 1/4 feet. And we can tell what the record was because it's written here on the wall, 8 7/12. So we need to write an expression to model the situation. Well, we're trying to find a difference because it says how much shorter than the gym's record. So we're going to write down first 8 7/12 minus 7 1/4. Now, if we estimate the answer, we're looking at 7/12. We know 8's going to be there. But 7/12, is that closest to 0, half, or 1? It's closest to half because it's only 1/12 off of being half. Okay, then we know that the 7's still going to be there. And we look and we say, is 1/4 going to be 0 or half or 1? Well, once again, it's right in the middle. So we're going to say that it is 7 and it's closer to 0. Now, if you said 7.5, I would say that's okay. I'm okay with that. 8.5 minus 7.5 is going to be 1.5. So the difference should be pretty close to 1.5. So it says rewrite the expression in part A using equivalent fractions with a common denominator. So we're going to once again do that over here on the side. 8 7/12 minus 7 1/4. Now, it's always nice when you have a fraction that has one of the denominators is the common denominator. And in this case, it's already right here. It's 12 because you can multiply 4 times some number to get 12. So we're just going to bring the 7/12 right over because we don't have to do anything to it. It's already got a 12 in the denominator. But the second one needs to be changed. So we have to multiply 4 times something in order to be able to figure out how many 12ths will it be. 4 times what gives me 12? That would be 3. So it'd be 3/3 because 3/3 equals 1. We're not changing the value of the fraction. We're just changing the digits. So 1 times 3 is 3. So 7/12 minus 3/12 equals 4/12. And 8 minus 7 equals 1. So we just bring that 1 right over here. Okay, now 4/12 can be simplified. Okay, you can divide both the 4 and the 12 both by 4. Okay, so let me see if I can squeeze this in over here. By 4/4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So it's 1 1/3. Okay, so you can see our answer is pretty close to our estimate. Okay, rewrite the expression. We did that here. And then how far is jump from the record? That's right here, and simplified is right here. Okay, so it's, as I said before, it's exactly the same as yesterday's lesson. The only major difference is now we have mixed numbers. So let's move on to the check understanding. So once again, we need to highlight the important information. Jenna competes in the high jump. Her best jump in the first meet was 4 1/4 foot or feet. Her best jump on the second meet is 4 5/6 feet. Write an expression using equivalent fractions with a common denominator to model how how much the height of her jump increased. By how much does the height of her jump increase? Show your answer is reasonable. So we need to highlight what we need to do. Write an expression using equivalent fractions with a common denominator to model how much height of her jump increased, and by how much does the height of her jump increase, and then show that your answer is reasonable. So we have to do all three of those things. So we have to first look at 4 5/6 and 4 1/4. We're trying to find the difference between the two of them. So we want to find which one's larger, and the 4 5/6 is larger. And so we're going to put the 4 1/4 underneath it. Common denominators. We do not have one of these that has the correct denominator, so we're going to have to figure that out. What would be the least common denominator that we can get between 6 and 4? If we set our multiples of 4, it'd be 4, 8, 12. And if you're used to the patterns by now, because we've done this one before, it would be 12. So 12 is going to be our common denominator. And we're going to find out what fraction that equals 1 can we use to create 12. 6 times what gives me 12? That would be 2 halves. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times what gives me 12? That would be 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 10 twelfths minus 3 twelfths equals 7 twelfths. So our problem that would have common denominators would be 4 10 twelfths minus 4 3 twelfths equals 7 twelfths. There's our answer. The height increased by 7 twelfths. And then to show that your answer is reasonable, 4 5/6 would be 5. Minus 4 1/4 would be, and that's where it becomes a debate again. I believe it would be 4 1/2 or 4, but if we did 5 minus 4, it would be 1, and 7 twelfths could be justified as being 1. So that's how you show that it's reasonable. So let's knock off these last two problems. So we have 2 3/5 plus 1 3/10. And the question is, what's going to be my common denominator? This is one of those problems where we already have it listed. It's going to be tenths, which means this one comes right over. This one, we have to do some converting. So this one's just going to be 3/10. And this one, we have to find the equivalent fraction. This should become familiar by now because we've been doing this a whole bunch of time. If you've been working on your assignments, you should be able to do this. 5 times what gives me 10? It'd be 2 halves. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/10 plus 3/10 equals, let's see if I can squeeze it in here. 9. Nope, I couldn't. 9/10. And then we put the whole number right next to it. 2 plus 1 is 3. So our answer is 3 9/10. And then our last one, we have 3 7/8. Minus this time 1 1/2. So if we look at our 8 and our 2, we once again happen to have a common denominator already listed in the problem, and that's going to be 8. Because you can multiply 2 times something to get 8. So we're just going to take this 7/8 over here, and we're going to have to figure out what do we need to convert this 1/2. And some of you might already know because you've gotten kind of familiar with halves. 2 times what gives me 8? That'd be 4, so it'd be 4/4. 1 times 4 is 4. So I'm not even going to try and squeeze it underneath here this time. 7/8 minus 4/8 equals 3/8. And 3 minus 1 equals 2. So our answer is 2 3/8. And that's it for today's lesson. Now, there is an assignment that is assigned to these pages, but it happens to be Friday, so I'm not going to give it to you. But I will tell you this, if you have not yet already completed your 2023 review, or at least your 4 IXLs for this week, please be working on that right now to get it done. If you are finished with that, you may work on Waggle or even Prodigy, but please make sure you have all your other work finished before you start doing the other things. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask the substitute, or I'd be more than happy to help you when I come back on Monday. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you later. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.